Anduril Flame of the West was the sword of King Aragorn from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Forged from the remains of its shattered predecessor Narsil, it was one of the most important artifacts carried by the Fellowship. In 1999, when The Lord of the Rings movie adaptation began production, concept artists John Howe and Alan Lee were tasked with creating the film look for the Anduril sword, and Weta Workshop was slated to forge it. Their combined efforts produced the hollow pommeled design that we know very well today. So this month on DIY Prop Culture Builds, we build Anduril Flame of the West. For materials, you will need a 1x4, a dowel, some modeling clay, electrical tape, hot glue, aluminum tape, and cardboard. To start off, print out and assemble a template of the sword. Tack your template onto the wood and trace the dimensions onto it. Once the cutout is transferred, cut the wood. If you've watched this series before, you'll know that there are many ways to go about this. My process, though a bit unconventional, works pretty well for me. I took a machete knife and chipped away at the surface until I got the right width and depth. I did this to create the blade and also what would eventually become the tang. I say tang because most of the handle of this honestly turns out to be clay. The blade will look pretty rough at this point, so sand it into a smoother shape. Next, I took a wooden dowel and cut out two 3.5-inch long pieces and attached them to the opposing sides of the tang to make the crossguard. I used the modeling clay to build up the form of the handle. This will also stabilize the crossguard, so make sure it dries in the proper shape. The crossguard sort of bumps up in the middle in what I can only describe as a very small shield. It's a very blink and you'll miss it sort of detail in the real sword, but it definitely wouldn't look right if it wasn't there. One of the most challenging part was creating a hollow pommel. I did this over the course of 2 days. The first day, I made the upper half with 2 struts that stuck out on either end. Then on the second day, I finished the bottom half by connecting these 2 pieces. I also, around this point, created the tips of the crossguards, and although in the film they are hollowed like the pommel, in the medium of clay that wouldn't be super realistic because that would just make them too fragile. Now, by far the most difficult part of the build was the fullers, or what most people call blood grooves. This took me about 4 days to do. That's because I kept breaking the bits on my Dremel tool. Long story short though, once they were roughly carved out, I sanded them and filled in the deeper blemishes with clay. Now that the fullers were smooth as possible, I traced out and carved out the runes that are down in the fullers, as well as the little wings above the crossguard, although they're pretty hard to see in the final product, to be honest. I used some hot glue to create the final details on the hilt, and used some electrical tape to make the handle. If you're a fan of the series, you'll know the drill here. Use your aluminum tape to chrome plate the pommel, crossguard, and blade. Anduril may be finished, but we're not quite done with this build yet. If you're a long-time viewer of the channel, you may remember in July of 2020, I made Sting. And although it came out really well for my third build, I always regretted not building its scabbard. Something just feels complete about a sword with its scabbard. So I cut 2 structural walls out of cardboard and bound this cardboard with electrical tape, being careful to make it not fit too tightly around the blade, so that it would fit securely, but not get stuck in it. I created a small belt loop to attach to the back of the scabbard, and used a combination of hot glue and aluminum tape to shape the metal figures on the tip and down the lengths of the scabbard. And with the blade and its accompanying sheath, we have built our very own Anduril Flame of the West. This cost about 20 bucks for me to make when it's all said and done, but I used a lot of parts that I already had lying around, so it could be as expensive as $30, maybe $40, depending on where you source your wood from. I'm not gonna lie, this build was a bit brutal, but I'd say I needed a more challenging build after a few, to be honest, relatively easy ones. So thank you for watching. If you have a prop suggestion for the future or built along and want to share, tag me in a post on one of these socials. And as always, if you like this video and you want to see more like it, then subscribe and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.